Hey, you have Patrick Fedora here, managing partner at Visa Franchise. We get inundated with different questions for the E2 visa, so we thought it'd be easier just to bring on an expert today. We have immigration attorney Yael Brudner, based in Southern California. Yael, thanks for joining.
Hi, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So the idea of today's conversations to go through some of the FAQs, the frequently asked questions about the E2 visa. We have some questions here that I'd love to jumpstart the webinar today. But if you're listening, whether it's on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, if you have any questions, put it in the chat. And Yael, or if it's more related to the business side, we'll answer to the best of our ability. So, yeah, I'm sure you get this question all the time. How much investment is required for the E2 visa?
Oh my gosh, of course, that's the most common question, the most frequently asked question about the E2. How much do you need to invest? And honestly, the law does not specify a specific amount. So there's no minimum that you need to invest. What the law and the regulations do say is that you have to invest a substantial amount of capital in your business, which is tough because what does even substantial amount mean, right? So substantial amount actually varies from business to business. What is considered substantial for one business might not be considered for another. But general, as a rule of thumb, if people do want to have a number, we kind of try to aim for around the 100K of investment, even though we've seen great successful E2s with less than that.
It seems like under 100K just creates a little more strain to the process where you'll get it done, but there's just everything has to be that much more buttoned up.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It gets a little more trickier when you're under 100K, but it's possible. And it really has to do with what your business is. So
Can you
if
think
you're
of
a
any?
startup, Mhm.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a startup business and your startup costs are very low, you can justify a lower amount. I've seen E2s with 55, 65K of startup costs that were
What
successful.
industries did they invest in? For I'm curious, if you want to get in at the lower amount, what type of industries might you want to consider over other ones? Like obviously a hotel, something real estate related is going to be very high, but what can you get
Right.
in at that lower threshold?
Right. So anything that's more service based, most likely you'll be more successful where you don't need, much to start your business. Like you need a laptop and a phone and internet, right? To start. So we've had consulting agencies, companies, service providers for different fields that were successful in those lower amounts.
And then
Mhm.
what's the basis steps like? We always get the question, should I apply it with USAS and adjust my status, or should I go to an embassy or a consulate abroad to apply for the E2 visa?
Right. Also, a super common question of logistics, right? Like, how do you even apply for the E2? What's the best way? Um, Traditionally, the best way, in my opinion, is to apply through the US Embassy or Consulate directly for the E2 visa. Um, However, if you are here in the United States in a valid non-immigrant status, then you could apply to change your status um, to become an E2 status here in the US. I don't usually recommend that because if you want to travel, right, and our clients, our business owners, entrepreneurs, they travel a lot.
Yeah, going back and
Changing to
forth.
E status doesn't help you. You still have to go and get an E2 visa to come back.
And it seemed like a more common path during COVID where it was taking like 6 months to 18 months to get a consulate interview. Where now, I don't know, what type of trends are you seeing in terms of turnaround time to get an interview at some of these consulates?
Yeah, that's still has not come back to pre-COVID, unfortunately. It really depends on the embassy or the consulate, which one we're talking about, but it can take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months or 8 months to get an interview
Yeah, and I
start.
know like there are some consulates like Colombia where it was almost 2 years that they were closed, and we just had our first approval out of Colombia, I think 2 months back. Um,
Mhm.
to my knowledge, all the consulates and embassies are processing E2 visas, but it was kind of strange how some were open, some weren't. And it's definitely not back to the pre-COVID, but it's better than 2 years ago.
Right. It's definitely better. And I do believe that all the posts are open now. And Colombia was definitely one of the last ones to open. They completely stopped for years, for maybe I think 2 years or even more. So it's really to check your specific embassy, to see what's going on and what's the processing times there.
So it jumps to the next question, which, how long it takes once the application, everything's ready, and if you're working together with someone listening, they engage your service, helping fill out the DS-160, getting the appointment.
Mhm.
So understand that can be 2 to 8 months, could be less, it could be more. How long does it take before that? What's like the total process look like to get the E2 visa?
Right. So one of the things a lot of people don't know about the E2 visa is that you have to have everything together, everything ready, everything set up. You have to have invested already, basically, and spent this significant or substantial investment prior to applying for the visa at the consulate. So there's a lot of work to be done to prepare your case before you go to your interview. Usually, I want to say on average, it takes at least 3 months for most of our clients to get everything together.
That makes sense. Yeah, and
Mhm,
and people can work with us to set up the LLC, business bank account, all that type of work, and
mhm.
getting the tax ID takes like 45 days, and that's with us like following up with IRS and being on top of it, where if you're not on top of the process, it could take 4 months to even just get the tax ID to then open up a business bank account. So there are a lot of moving parts that have to happen in parallel to hit
Mhm.
that time frame of 2, 3, 4 months, because it can easily become 6 months if you're not on top of it.
Exactly. And if you're abroad and you're not here, right, it's really crucial to have someone here in the US that can help you do all of this, right? How do you need someone to open your bank account, to establish the business, to help you with transferring of funds, getting that tax ID number that is crucial as well. So all of that needs to happen even before you talk to your immigration attorney and start preparing your case to be filed.
So yeah, we've spoken about the investment amount.
Mhm.
E2 visa, you have to have a passport of certain countries. Last we checked, it was like 75 or so countries. Who else is eligible? What else does someone need to be able to get the E2 visa that we haven't talked about so far?
Right. So the E2 visa, right? It's an investor visa. And like you said, it's not available to everyone. It's only available for foreign nationals that are from certain countries that have a treaty with the United States, right? The treaty countries. And right now, there's a long list of those countries, and more are being added. So the first requirement, like you said, is to be a national of a treaty country. The cool thing is that you don't have to necessarily be born in that country. So if you have a passport from a country that's a treaty country, that's sufficient. So that's the first requirement. You have to have made a substantial investment in a US business. You have to show that this investment is going to be significant. It's going to not only help you, the investor, to generate income, but it's also going to help the US economy. That's what we call the marginality requirement, right? You have to show that your business is not marginal. And you have to show that you, the investor, you are in the position to manage and direct this enterprise, this business in the United States that will cause great success here in the United States. So those are generally speaking. There are some more requirements, but those are generally the big ones.
And Yael, how long is the E2 visa valid for?
Yeah. So the E2 visa could be valid for different amounts of time. It depends on the country that you are from. So every country has a different treaty with the United States with different validities. Um, usually it's about 2 to 5 years validity of the visa itself.
And I know those are changing quite a bit, where Mexico used to just be 1 year. Now I believe it's
Mhm.
4 years. Chile was 5 years. It went down to 1 year. So I think
I know.
France also might have changed. So it's definitely a moving target in terms of what the validity is.
Correct. Correct. So it's really important, even as immigration attorneys, we check this every time, before we advise the client and say, okay, what's going on? What's the current status because of all these changes?
So imagine E2 visas, loving in here. His or her spouse also likes it, has a job. The kids have adapted well to school, and they don't want to go back home. What are some common ways for them to stay and transition to a U.S. green card followed by U.S. citizenship?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, the E2 visa is just such a great visa, and it does allow you to bring your spouse with you, and for your spouse to have an open work permit to work anywhere. It allows you to bring your children up to age 21 to study here, to go to school. However, it does not directly lead to a green card, right? So if you do want to qualify for a green card, you have to qualify in a different way, and there's different ways that you can do it. So one of a way that a lot of our clients actually do it is through the spouse. So if we have
Yeah.
a primary investor, right, and then we have the spouse that has an open work permit working for a company, the spouse might be petitioned through their company in an employment-based green card setting, EB2 or EB3 green card. Um, and then the whole family kind of goes into that. We have clients that go with the national interest waiver, NIW option. We have clients that their business is thriving, super successful, and they can upgrade to the EB5, which is an investment-based green card that requires a higher investment amount and creation of 10 US jobs. So there are different options that are definitely available if you're here on an E2.
So assuming you don't want a green card for whatever reason, or maybe the validity of the visa is just 1 year and you have to renew the E2, how do you go about renewing the E2 visa?
Yeah. So a lot of our clients are here on E2s for many years. They're not interested in residency,
Yeah.
actually, right? For all kinds of reasons. Um, so you can renew the E2, and that's one of the great things about the E2s is that it can be renewed indefinitely as long as you still meet the requirements of the E2, right? So you would have to show that you still that your investment is still at risk, that your business is still active, that it's not marginal, right? That it is sufficient to provide not just for your income, the investor, but also improve the U.S. economy. Um, yeah, and then just go through the renewal process, which is usually if everything is going well, the business is still operating, is usually a straightforward process.
Yeah, it seems like as long as the business has a few jobs and is making money, it's straightforward. But if
Mhm.
it's losing money, then that's where it can get a little delicate. And we've had clients that were about to go through the renewal process, and then they came to us to bring in a franchise business to make a stronger case for their E2 visa renewal.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, during COVID, we had a lot of clients that their businesses were not doing as they would expect. And they had to pivot and they had to change and they had to change models and they had to change um, revenue streams. So definitely, I feel like as long as you can explain it and you can show the embassy that there's a reason why it didn't go as
Yeah,
planned and you
for a
have a
global
plan,
pandemic, that's
right?
a valid reason.
Yeah, most of them, go well.
And I'd like to bring on some of the questions from our audience. So we'll start with Lucas. Thanks for this information. Who can apply for the E2 visa? We've kind of gone through this, but maybe you could just hit like a couple bullet points for Lucas, who might
Yeah,
have joined a little late.
absolutely. Thanks for the question. So, in order to apply for the E2 visa, you have to show that you are a national of a treaty country. Okay, one of the countries that the US has an agreement with. You have to show that you've made a substantial investment in a US business in the United States. You have to show that this investment is going to be not marginal. It's going to benefit the U.S. economy. You're going to create jobs. You're going to generate income that's more than just for you, you're the investor. You have to show that this business is active or it will be active upon the approval of your E2. And finally, you have to show that you are in the position to manage and direct this enterprise in the US. Those are kind of like the big general requirements.
Well summarized. And then we have from Tomas Jameson, hey, which cases are the most common to get approved faster?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, I want to say that probably the higher the investment, the more established the business is, the more US employees there already are, the more you can show that you have everything together, everything's up and running. This is an active and not marginal business. Then most likely the approval will be more straightforward without it pushbacks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
I think where we've had clients struggle in the past is where they're on the edge of signing that lease, committing the funds, not opening the business, and those cases are definitely harder to get across the finish line.
Definitely.
And then from KW, can we use home equity to invest for the E2 visa? So I'd imagine someone would take a reverse mortgage and bring money out, whether they're residing in the US, Canada, or some other country to invest for the E2 visa business.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the source of the funds is actually a big deal when it goes to E2 investments. You do have to show where you got the money from, right? The government wants to make sure that these funds are from a legal source. Um, and you can absolutely use a loan to fund your E2 investment as long as the loan is not secured with the E2 business, right? So if it's a private home equity loan, then you should be fine.
And then from Maria Luisa, if I'm married to someone from a treaty country, can I apply for the E2 since my country does not apply?
If you are married to a U.S. To someone that is from the treaty country, I believe you can do that. Um, you would have to show that you have a passport from that country as well to qualify for the treaty country. So you don't have to necessarily be born in the treaty country, but you do have to show that you do have a passport from that country.
We've had clients in the past, and I don't know what the current regulation now, but it's like
Mhm.
one spouse is Italian, the other one is Brazilian. And I guess as long as the Italian does the investment, the dependents get the E2 visa and the
Right,
passports. But they
right.
can't, you can't, Maria Luisa, you can't be the principal investor. You have to have a qualifying passport.
Exactly. So it's not enough to be married. You have to have that passport as well. But your spouse can be, right? And you can be the dependent. So the dependent does not need to be um, a treaty country national.
And then we have a question. Would you say a small franchise would be a good start, or do you recommend staying away from a small franchise? I'll comment from like a business perspective.
Yeah.
By small franchise, I would imagine not many units are open. So there's less historics when you're making a financial decision to see if the business is going to make good financial sense. I don't know if you mean it also by a low investment threshold. If it's a low investment threshold, but there's 200 franchisees that are all making money, or almost all of them are making money, and you can show that to the consulate officer, I think that would make sense. But I guess we would need more clarity. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts, Yael.
I mean, I think the investment unit is considered by itself, right? Your specific franchise would be evaluated. So I guess it would have to go with what the investment amount is, like what's considered small, to see
Exactly.
if that's substantial. Mhm.
And then, yeah, in terms of making the process more condensed and making it easier for you and your team to start working on the E2 visa case, what are some items that prospective E2 visa investors should already start thinking about, whether it be the source of funds or different documents that they really need to start? It'd be helpful to already start collecting that information or be mindful of it at least.
Yeah. So organization of the documents is key, right? So the earlier you can consult with an immigration attorney in your journey is the better, because even though you might not be ready to start your E2 visa case yet, and you're still getting everything ready, right? You're still vetting businesses. You're still trying to make a decision what you want to invest in. You still want to consider different options. You need to open your US business. You need to get that tax ID. Like there's a lot of things you need to do. Having kind of a strategic plan and being mindful to the fact that you have to have everything documented, everything really organized, really would help your process, right? You're mindful to the source of funds, right? You know that there's such a thing, right? You have to track where the funds come from so you can get yourself all organized with everything, separate personal and business, investments and expenses. Little things like that could really help down the road to make a smoother way filing.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions that you're frequently asked with your hundreds, if not thousands, of consultations on this subject?
Um, let's see. I mean, in terms of common questions, I think we hit on a lot of the common questions. A lot of people are curious, like what kind of business should they pick? Like what would qualify? And the amazing thing about the E2, and honestly, it's one of my favorite visas.
Right.
As a business owner, entrepreneur myself, I feel really connected to this, and I love helping business owners, start their businesses, be able to come here and run their businesses. Um, I think the cool thing about the E2 is that there's no specific field, right? So we've helped people that came to open a yoga studio, marketing agencies, restaurants, cafes, retail stores, big technology companies, um, service-based, so many different types. And it really lends itself for a wide variety of different businesses, even things like real estate, where traditionally people thought, oh no, we can't do an E2 for real estate. I know you guys, Patrick's, have a lot of great options for investors, in real estate to pursue the
Definitely.
E2.
Yeah, as long as it's structured well and that there's
Mhm.
job creation and as you mentioned a few times now, the marginality requirement, there
Yeah.
are real estate related businesses that you can invest in for the E2 visa. And one thing we didn't comment is on the E1 category. And I know
Mhm.
you have a very close experience with the E visa category, whether it's E2 or E1.
Yeah.
Um, but could you maybe comment on why someone would go with the E1 visa versus the E2 visa as they decide what treaty visa might be best for them?
Yeah. So E1 is different than E2, right? The similarity with the E1 is it is also a treaty-based visa, so it's also required to be from a member of a treaty country. However, the E1 doesn't necessarily require an investment. It just requires that there is significant trade between the treaty country, and the U.S. So it's more about businesses that can support international trade of services or products. So it's kind of a different model, but also available and could be a great solution to a lot of people.
So I imagine people listening that have a software development company, phone
Mhm.
call center, anything that's really doing a lot of business with the US and might
Mhm.
be eligible and there's no required investment, right?
Nope. Right. So it could be easier for folks that not to provide that initial investment, and also a little less risky, right? Because you don't have to put that investment funds down.
Yael, any other items that we didn't cover today that you think would be helpful for our audience?
Um, no, I think we've covered a lot. I really recommend having professionals by your side. I can't emphasize this enough. Having a great partner to help you create your business and vet the business, and get really, the best opportunity for you in the U.S. and having a great attorney as well to be with you on your journey, so everything will go as smooth as possible.
Yeah, and
Probably my
hopefully the
best
E2
advice.
visa is the first step of, if they like it here, then go into the green card, then go into naturalization, and someone could work with you throughout the entire process. Where there's some law firms that are really just specific on one visa category or another, and you're going to have to change attorneys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
what's the
Mhm.
best way for people to get in contact with you? what's your process for helping people evaluate what visa option might be best for them and their family?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to contact me, I'd love to help. We are located in Orange County, California, so Southern California, but we do serve clients from all over the US and throughout the world. And you can reach out to us through our website, brunerlaw.com. And the first step is really to schedule a consultation with me. I'm the main attorney here, and to give kind of an overview of what options there are, and for me to advise you the best way.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, we just put up your website there.
Awesome,
We'll
thank you.
also include it in the description. Um,
Perfect.
yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining, and really appreciate all your answers. And you answered it in a very clear and concise fashion. So thanks for that.
Awesome.
And I'm sure you'll be hearing from a lot of folks on consultations.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.